Out on the vast plains of the Kazakh steppe lies a place with an eerie secret. Covering an 18,500 square kilometer stretch of wilderness, it looks to all intents and purposes like just another swath of endless grassland. Yet this quiet exterior hides a sinister past. During the years of the Soviet Union, this area was strictly off-limits. Those who could get close enough witnessed blinding flashes and watched in awe as mushroom clouds expanded across the sky. This place's name was the Semipalatinsk test site, also known as the Polygon. Today, we know it as the most nuked place on Earth, and join us in this video as we unravel the chilling mysteries of the Polygon. In 1947, Lavrentiy Beria, the head of the notorious NKVD, selected the Polygon for Soviet nuclear testing. This vast area witnessed the detonation of the first Soviet atom bomb and the inaugural air-tested hydrogen bomb. Over 40 years, a quarter of all nuclear tests in history occurred here, leaving the landscape irradiated. On August 12, 1953, residents of Semipalatinsk, a Kazakh city, witnessed an unusual burning flash of light. Atomic tests had been ongoing on the plains 150 kilometers west of the city. But this flash was different. A thunderous boom followed, accompanied by a shockwave that shattered windows and lifted people off their feet. Unknown to the panicked locals, Soviet scientists at the Polygon had just detonated their first thermonuclear device. After the explosion, thick black dust fell across Semipalatinsk, carrying ominous consequences for its residents. The Soviet atomic project began in earnest in 1945 after witnessing the US detonate a superweapon over Hiroshima. Stalin, eager to catch up, tasked Lavrentiy Beria with pushing Soviet scientists to rapidly advance their nuclear physics knowledge. By 1947, progress was well underway in building a functional atom bomb. The only missing piece was a testing ground, leading to the fateful selection of Semipalatinsk. Semipalatinsk, a remote city in Kazakhstan, became a key site for Soviet nuclear testing. Following a brief period of independence after the revolution, Kazakhstan, including Semipalatinsk, was integrated into the Soviet Union. The sparsely populated steppe surrounding the city was an ideal location for covert weapons testing. Lavrentiy Beria, head of the NKVD, assured Stalin that the area was uninhabited, but this claim was untrue. Despite the lack of cities, villages, and nomadic people were living on the plain. Over the next year, the Polygon, the testing site, was constructed using forced labor from Kazakhstan's extensive network of gulags. Prisoners not only built the facility, but also replicated structures to measure the impact of nuclear blasts. By the fall of 1948, Beria's scientists had a functioning production reactor. Within a year, they had a working atomic bomb. On August 29, 1949, Semipalatinsk residents witnessed the first distant flash and rumble, believing the official explanation of an earthquake. However, it was the Soviets' successful test of a 22-kiloton bomb that marked the beginning of numerous tests in the region. The detonation of the first Soviet atom bomb became known globally due to radiation. A U.S. weather monitoring craft detected high atmospheric radiation levels between Japan and Alaska. President Harry Truman announced the news on September 23, 1949, initiating a global nuclear arms race. For those near the Polygon, this only meant more tests, with loud booms, bright flashes, and mushroom clouds becoming routine. The winds, intentionally or not, swept radiation across Kazakhstan and into Russia, exposing around 1.5 million people to its effects. The consequences ranged from dramatic incidents to the dangerous thermonuclear explosion in August 1953, despite not being the largest blast at the Polygon. On the day of the August 1956 test at the Semipalatinsk Polygon, prevailing winds carried the released radiation over Semipalatinsk, causing an increase in cancers and deformities in newborns. But the most immediate consequences were observed when the Polygon tested a dirty bomb designed to spread radiation extensively in August 1956. The bomb had a small yield, but high winds on the day of detonation led to acute radiation sickness in 600 people, 400 kilometers away in Ust-Kamenogorsk. All affected individuals were taken to party-run hospitals, but records regarding their survival remain unavailable. In the same year, the Soviet Union established its first secret lab, Anti-Brucellosis Dispensary No. 4, near Semipalatinsk, to monitor radiation effects. The lab operated in strict secrecy, treating people for radiation exposure without disclosing the nature of their ailments. By the ban on above-ground nuclear testing in 1963, over 110 devices had been detonated at the polygon, affecting at least 10,000 people. Despite the ban, testing at the polygon continued underground. Answering a common question about the U.S. nuclear tests near regular people, it's true that the U.S. did test atomic bombs above ground at the Nevada test site, and people in Las Vegas could see them. Unlike how the Soviets kept things secret, the Americans turned their tests into a big show. Las Vegas hotels even threw parties where people could watch the explosions. They sold rooms with views of the blasts and had events with special atomic cocktails. But the US thought they could predict the weather well enough to keep everyone safe, unlike the Soviets who didn't care which way the wind blew. While atomic parties in Las Vegas celebrated American nuclear tests, residents of places like St. George, Utah, were closer to the explosions. For St. George's residents, watching bombs was considered entertainment until they began experiencing health issues. In 1953, a series of 11 detonations at the Nevada test site led to gray dust covering St. George. Despite government assurances of safety, cancer rates surged in the early 1960s. The affected individuals, known as downwinders, pushed for recognition, leading to the 1963 ban on above-ground testing. Although the U.S. government did not initially acknowledge responsibility, the downwinders' activism led to the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act in 1990, providing compensation. Comparing the downwinders' situation with the Soviet Union's secrecy, denial, and testing on its citizens at the Semipalatinsk test site, Russia's situation was much worse. Those affected by the polygon's tests receive compensation from the Kazakh government, but it amounts to only $12 per month. In 1965, the USSR conducted an underground detonation at the polygon, diverting a river and creating a new lake as part of an experiment to use nuclear weapons in construction projects. The world learned of this plan, and despite its potential, the concept was rejected. The traces of the 1965 test remain on the remote plains of Kazakhstan. The lake, now known as Atomic Lake, or Lake Shagan, covers an area of over 500 meters with a maximum depth of 80 meters. Despite its inviting appearance, the water is not dangerous. However, caution is needed near the shoreline due to lingering radiation from a past blast. Atomic Lake is just one part of the leftovers at the Semipalatinsk test site. Some places, like Test Site 4A, where they tested dirty bombs, still have really high radiation levels, 100 to 400 times more than normal. So it's not safe to go there. On the other side, there are spooky places like the Geese. These are big concrete walls meant to see what happens to buildings in atomic blasts. Some folks talk about a fake underground metro station the Soviets supposedly built. Even though nobody we know has seen it, people say it's there. Moving on to the history of Semipalatinsk, the site witnessed the collapse of the USSR's nuclear program. Ironically, in 1986, Vitaly Sklyarov, the Minister for Power in Soviet Ukraine, declared the odds of a meltdown at a Soviet nuclear plant to be 1 in 10,000 years. The Chernobyl disaster, occurring exactly 2 months after Vitaly Sklyarov's statement about the odds of a meltdown, had a profound impact across the USSR. Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of glasnost allowed information about the Chernobyl disaster to reach ordinary citizens, leading to widespread protests against Soviet nuclear policy. In Semipalatinsk, these protests intensified after a botched underground test on February 12, 1989, released a significant amount of radioactive gas. The Kazakh poet Oljas Suleymenov called for mass anti-nuclear demonstrations, giving rise to the Nevada Semipalatinsk movement. This movement gained momentum and received support from Nursultan Nazarbayev, the local leader. On October 19, 1989, the Soviets conducted the last nuclear test at the Polygon, triggering massive protests with tens of thousands taking to the streets. When 1 million people signed a petition demanding the end of nuclear testing, Moscow felt the heat. They gave in, and on October 21, 1989, all testing at the Semipalatinsk site stopped. By August 1991, the Polygon was officially shut down. Just 4 months later, Kazakhstan said goodbye to the Soviet Union and declared independence. The Polygon had seen a whopping 456 nuclear bombs explode, accounting for over 25% of all nuclear tests globally. But for the folks living around Semipalatinsk, the troubles didn't end there. In late 1991, as Kazakhstan was gearing up to leave the USSR, Moscow sent officials to the closed Polygon. They gathered up and destroyed all documents, even medical records from anti-brucellosis dispensary number 4. This intentional wiping out of records left the world clueless about the full story of what happened at the Semipalatinsk test site. Today, the impact of the nuclear tests at the Polygon is still felt in Kazakhstan. Towns and villages surrounding the site are grappling with high rates of cancers, congenital diseases, and birth defects. In Semipalatinsk, now known as Semi, 1 in 20 children is reportedly born with deformities. The lack of proper records destroyed by Soviet officials in 1991 leaves residents uncertain about the full extent of the health consequences. While some scientific studies suggest a probable impact on local health, caution is urged against attributing every problem in Semi to radiation exposure. Similar to the aftermath of the Chernobyl cleanup, the psychological impact on Semi cannot be overlooked. Residents blame the vanished Soviets for their suffering, but the absence of conclusive evidence makes it difficult to ascertain the true causes of the health problems. Despite the grim reality for those worst affected, government support is limited, and there's not a robust social safety net in place. The Polygon, once the epicenter of Soviet nuclear testing, may seem like an ordinary place today, blending into the vast landscape. But beneath its calm exterior, it holds an invisible layer of horror. So, do you think that the residents of this area and their descendants will ever get justice for these life-changing tests? Let us know in the comments down below. And hey, if you enjoy digging into stories like these, hit that subscribe button for more. Thanks for tuning in, and catch you next time.